My name is Sonali, and I am the co-founder of Lighthouse AI. Like Sarosh said in the beginning, prior to this, I was a lead AI scientist at Progressive Insurance. And broadly, I have been in the space of AI for 6 years now. I'm very excited to present to you today the current and best practices to do quality assessment and evaluation of large language model-based applications. So let's dive right at it. Generative AI is disrupting industries across economies. As per a recent survey, business and enterprise leaders remain focused on generative AI ahead of other emerging technologies. And 80% think generative AI will disrupt their entire industries, while 20% think it will cause significant disruptions. Undoubtedly, in few years, every company will be a generative AI company in some format. Enterprises are integrating AI and generative AI into many different products. A recent survey by Menlo Ventures revealed that generative AI is typically being used in code copilots to provide code intelligence and generation, data extraction, summarization of long documents, content generation, building chatbots, and many more. Some popular use cases are to build copilots and chatbots of various types to assist in or automate many parts of a business. A very popular way to do this is via building a document Q&A system. The rapid adoption of generative AI in enterprises is in big part due to the ease of integrating AI via APIs and libraries, such as LangChain, Llama Index, and many more. It literally takes only days or perhaps like a day to create a proof of concept version of the application. Doesn't matter whether you are building a chatbot these days or a summarization app or a Q&A app, it takes just few lines of code. While it's very amazing to see prototypes being built rapidly, it still isn't a guarantee that the app is safe and reliable. So going from POC to production with LLM apps is not a very straightforward path. Typically, generative AI applications suffer from issues of hallucination, inconsistency, and toxic responses, security issues like vulnerabilities to prompt injection, privacy issues like data leaks, misalignment with business rules, low-quality long-form conversations, and many more. All of these issues they limit the prototype from being productionized faster. So an SME who could be a data scientist, AI engineer, or software engineer in your company who is now building the products spends close to 3 to 10 weeks in manually evaluating the outputs. Typically, this is done by eyeballing examples. After extensive manual validation by SMEs and refinement by developers, the entire validation process has to be again repeated for each application that is built. So while it takes few days to create a POC, it takes weeks to get it into production. These risks are present for apps built using closed source foundation models like GPT and even open source models like Llama, Mistral, and so on. Unfortunately, in the current state of guardrails, they do not work well in real world use cases. So today, I'm excited to dig into these topics with you all. First, I will share some examples of the common issues present in LLM apps, then highlight the importance of evaluations. Then I'll share the several ways to conduct evaluations and give you some resources related to evaluations. And finally, we will take a look at the demos and the code. So let's dive right at it. First, let's start with the biggest concern with LLMs, which is hallucination. You might have already been familiar with hallucination. But for those who are not familiar, hallucination in case of large language models means LLMs make up information. because they are trained on large number of large data set from internet. So they typically give answers from their memory. In business context, retrieval augmented generation or RAG is a go-to technique to ground LLMs in private information of the company, and is believed to eliminate hallucinations as it derives the information from the data sources itself. Is it really the case? We tested that hypothesis in a finance context. We find that despite using RAG or retrieval augmented generation, the latest LLMs today, which is GPT-4 and Google's latest Gemini 1.5, give only correct responses 65% times. They make errors such as giving incomplete responses, adding extra information that is not present in the context, or hallucinating completely, or not providing a response at all. All of these experiments were performed on a FinQA dataset available on Hugging Face. You can go and explore this dataset as well, as it's given in the slide here. So, RAG does not solve hallucinations. Here is another example of the type of errors that LLMs make, or LLM-based apps make. Both GPT-4 and Gemini 1.5, they get confused in technical and specific domain-specific terms. Here is an example where, when asked about physical security, both LLMs responded about hardware and software security. Very easy to get confused, right? Many other error types are present as well, such as Gemini hallucinating information from its memory, because like I said before, these are trained on large number of internet data. So it is very easy to get information from their memory and not as opposed to saying what is actually present in the document. Another common issue that is seen in generative AI apps is of security via prompt injection and jailbreaks. Here are two examples where on the left, a customer service chatbot is made to swear by smartly prompt injecting, and on the right, it is made to give an unrealistic offer. So on the left, you see an actual example of TPT delivery service chat, and on the right is the Chevrolet chat that hallucinated quite easily. So what is a deadly combination here? You have put models into production without doing the actual QA testing. So hallucination combined with prompt injection, it can be a really dangerous recipe for your enterprises if you do not do the right QA or the evaluations. Another important problem is that of privacy problems, including data leaks. Various news reports have highlighted this after the release of ChatGPT, and this issue with the leading LLMs leak sensitive information like training data, PI information, and many more. Now that I have highlighted two very important issues, there is another very under-discussed issue as well, and which is very important in case of LLMs, and that is called inconsistency to variations. What is that? So we have identified that when you provide that the same information in different ways to large language models, such as writing dates in different ways or rewriting the entire input with different phrasing, the responses by LLMs can be drastically different. Such issues also make the system unreliable. And yes, there are two queries that were given to a single RAG system, but the outputs were very different, as you can see. In one of the output, it gave the correct information that the remaining availability of company's authorized share is 22.6 billion when it was given the dates in this manner. Just tweaking it a bit and giving the dates in a different way, first day of April in 2023 and changing the May 4th to 4th day of May 2023. Now it says that the information was not mentioned in the provided context information. This can very well happen to the apps in the enterprises. So with this example, you can now imagine how sensitive these apps are to minor variation in prompts. Okay, now that I have shown you various different ways to various different issues that the LLM apps face, so let's dive right at the evaluation. The LLM evaluation is an active area of research because of the reasons that I just mentioned. And let's see how people are currently evaluating LLMs and generative AI apps in their enterprises. Menlo Ventures did a survey where they found a common way in which enterprises are handling evaluation is actually 66% of the companies, they actually evaluate generative AI apps manually. Around 45% have developed some sort of internal tools or mechanism to do the evaluations or labeling. The third or the most popular way is to collect data directly from the users. So once the system is put into practice, but you can imagine how risky that is. Fourth, the LLMs are used to evaluate LLMs, and that is done 25% of the time. But that is increasingly becoming a popular trend these days, LLMs as a judge. Lastly, the companies use external software or academic benchmarks as well for the evaluations. While manual evaluation is the most popular technique, it clearly has many challenges. It usually is done superficially by eyeballing a few examples. On the other hand, if done thoroughly, it can be extremely time-consuming. It is also not clear in a typical organization, so who is supposed to do this manual work? Is it the data scientist? Is it the developer? Is it the ML engineer? Who is supposed to do it? Or is it a separate QA team which is sitting and which most organizations do not have, by the way? Because of all these issues, validation is often skipped altogether, and either the apps that end up serving for the internal team or the employees, or if they make into production or if they go into customers, it has a lot of risk. It can have legal risk, brand risk, or many other type of risks that I explained before. So skipping evaluations and quality assurance can actually land companies in hot waters. The challenge with evaluation and quality assurance of a full-blown production application is that it requires a multifaceted testing. The evaluations need to be conducted for hallucinations, definitely for hallucinations, rack components, inconsistency to input variations, what I showed before, and presence of toxic inputs, off-topic responses, security issues, privacy issues, fairness, bias, and in the future world of AI agents, evaluation of function and API calls. Clearly, the popular practice of RAG evaluation is only a small subset of multifaceted evaluation that is necessary. And that is what the enterprises are doing right now. So when working in an enterprise scenario, it is actually not sufficient to simply rely on academic benchmarks for the performance of LLMs. You might have already heard, like when a model is released into the public, let's say Mistral or Llama or whatnot, they are actually benchmarked on academic benchmarks. And these really, and if you go to the leaderboards, you can see that they are outperforming one after the other, the benchmarks that is there. But can we actually rely on academic benchmarks when we are developing apps for the enterprises? It's actually not. The performance on academic benchmarks and real-world use cases, they're typically not aligned. Even consider the finance example that I shared a few slides ago. The latest LLMs get only 65% of accuracy, despite their performance being close to perfect in many academic benchmarks. So you can't really improve a system what you can't measure. So let's take a look at the landscape of eval techniques right now. We can map the eval techniques on a scale of how much manual effort is needed. So let's draw a line and put manual on the left and automated on the right. The academic benchmarking techniques lie somewhere in the middle, since the benchmark tests are typically created with some manual work. They are very high quality data sets, by the way, but their applicability to industry use cases is very less. The second one is actually the manual human evaluation methods that can be mapped all the way to the left. And the third is a fully automated method, which is LLMs evaluating LLMs that are mapped to the right. Finally, there is one more. It's called human in the loop or human plus AI loop technique that leverage best of the both worlds. Let's look at the pros and cons of each of these techniques and how to use them. Let's start with number one, which is academic benchmarks. The advantages are that they are large scale and are already publicly available. Since these datasets are pre-curated in a lab setup, they have the golden responses. Many of these benchmarks have many tasks and scenario setups. However, some of the biggest challenges with academic benchmarks right now is that they do not match the enterprise data or tasks. Academic benchmarks are created with public tasks and data, which is not the same setup as within the enterprises. Thus, the performance on academic benchmarks does not correlate or does not translate one-on-one to performance in enterprise data and in production. So there are few benchmarks that are very popular, and the large language models or the foundation models, they are typically evaluated on these benchmarks. Some of them are Helm, Glue, and Superglue. So Helm is a recent benchmark developed by Stanford researchers, and Helm stands for Holistic Framework for Evaluating Foundation Models. It's pretty large actually, and it is a very, like it says, it's a holistic framework. So it covers around 119 models, 116 scenarios, and 110 metrics. These scenarios, they include question and answering, information retrieval, summarization, language modeling, text classification, and other tasks. This is because the large language models that are developed, they should be capable of performing all of these tasks. The second technique, which is most popular, which is the most popular eval technique, is actually a human evaluation. There are several advantages to using human evaluations. You can actually hire subject matter experts or SMEs to do the evaluations, or you can make your team, your data science team, or your ML team do the evaluations themselves. Since you're interacting with the evaluators, you can train them and create a trustworthy labeling process. There is only a one-time effort to set up the annotation pipeline. However, using human evals also has certain challenges. As you can really imagine, it can be very slow and cannot scale to thousands of models or systems. Let's say from today, let's say in 5 years, you are deploying then you're deploying hundreds and hundreds of models, generative AI models, and you are doing eval for each and every model manually. How cumbersome that would be. And it would be very expensive, by the way, both in terms of, expensive in terms of time and cost. The evaluators may not perform consistently, and there can be inconsistency between the labelers. Finally, training and managing SMEs to do the task is actually a very time-consuming process. So if you decide to leverage human evaluations, there are few choices of tools to use. Some popular ones are Prodigy, Label Studio, and Argila. The functionalities among all of them are pretty much the same. You can upload the data that you need to be evaluated, and then the evaluators will do the tasks via the platform. So let's see some examples. Here is an example of Prodigy, showcasing a text classification in a correct or wrong setting. You can give, let's say, like this is text classification thing. Is cream cheese really good in mashed potatoes? And then you can classify whether this is a recipe or this is a feedback or a question. Similarly, Argila is actually an open source library available on Hugging Face. And here is a screenshot of what Argila does to rate Q&A chatbot. And it does rate the quality of the record from 1 to 5. And it collects the reasoning behind these papers. So once they get the feedback, they can improve the system. So like I said before, if you cannot evaluate, you cannot improve the system. So this is one technique to improve the system by collecting human feedbacks. Label Studio, on the other hand, it provides a pipeline for you to collect human evaluations and annotations and use them to build an RLHF pipeline to continuously improve your generative AI system. The third evaluation technique are automated evaluation, which are very quite popular these days, by the way. Here an LLM-based system is used for evaluation. This technique is practical since they allow automated evaluation with no or very little manual effort and is scalable to many tasks. But the one question that always arises is, who is actually evaluating these LLMs and is it accurate? Popular frameworks include Ragas, Langsmith, Arise, Arthur, and TrueLens. Now let's take a look at the evaluation criteria for RAG evaluations. First, it is divided into 3 types. First is the similarity metrics. It can be word overlap, how the words they overlap between the ground response and the RAG response. Next is the blue score and the root score. And remember, like all of these, the scores that you are seeing here, they need some ground truth responses. So you need to have some ground truth response before using these metrics. The second category is the semantic metrics. First, it does the embedding similarity. It gives a similarity score between the ground truth response and the response from the RAG. I'll actually show this in the demo that I have saved it in the end. And then coherence and consistency. How coherence and consistency with respect to the context that is there. The third type is the LLM eval metrics. And specifically, this is for Ragas, which says if the answers are correct, if there is faithfulness, if there is context relevance and context precision and recall. The last two, these can be done if you have ground truth, if you have some ground truth labels. And here is an example of how to use Ragas tool to do the automated evaluations. They have 4 key metrics: faithfulness, answer correctness, context precision, and context recall, context precision and recall, and context relevance, like I showed before. Yes, and it can be just few lines of code, and then it can be used to evaluate. Finally, there is one more. It's called human in the loop or human plus AI eval technique that leverages both best of both the world. Evaluations are highly trustworthy. Evaluations here are highly trustworthy, more than automated evals, due to the involvement of human or SME who can provide oversight to these evaluations. AI optimizes the work and reduces the manual efforts, making the evaluation process faster than fully manual effort. So this goes in a loop. Let's say first the LLM they do the evaluations, then the SMEs they use an AI assisted framework to do the evaluations, and based on the feedback, the system is again improved. So this goes in a loop, and this makes the process scalable. One shortcoming is that it requires high-quality human-in-the-loop framework, and the current available technique is given by Lighthouse AI. Lighthouse can be used to conduct holistic evaluations spanning RAG hallucinations, security, privacy, off-topic, and toxic evaluations. Since it is a human plus AI framework, the RAG hallucination metrics are more nuanced, spanning correct and complete, correct but incomplete, which means that there are some information that are missing, correct plus extra, which means that some additional information is present, fully incorrect or hallucinations, and finally, no response. And it also gives a holistic eval on topics such as privacy, security, off-topic, and toxicity. So using the human plus AI in the loop framework, several test cases can be generated with a few clicks. And the human expert can actually go and provide feedback in an AI-assisted manner, not by one, but in an AI-assisted manner, and make edits via the UI itself. So the evaluations can be conducted with few clicks to generate a detailed scorecard and error analysis. Now let's take a look at the demo. I'm trying to get into my Google Colab. I will be sharing my Google Colab in a second. Okay. Okay, so let me share. I have to get the sharing. So, okay, so I can share this entire Google Colab in the end, or I can just share the GitHub link for everyone who is trying to follow this. So this will be available to everyone in the end. First, we have to install a few packages. So what we are trying to develop here is we are trying to develop a RAG-based system, which will get answers from a website link. And then we are also creating a question and answer or the benchmarking data set on which the RAG system will be evaluated on. And I can show you like how you can build your own evaluations. So first you have to install the required packages. I've already installed that for the time's sake. And then give your OpenAI API key. So, okay. Here I have given the Data Science Dojo. I have taken a link from the blog of Data Science Dojo, which says, oh, okay, let's go to that first. Data Science Dojo blog open source LLMs for enterprises, the benefits, use cases, and challenges. So let's say I want to do a Q&A on this link. So here I'm using the a data loader, which is called the web-based loader, that basically scrapes the information from this link, and then it loads the data. The chunk size and the chunk overlap are nothing but like when you have the data, how well you can divide it into different chunks so that it can be ingested into the LLMs. Why this is necessary? Because the LLMs, they have a token size limit. So they cannot, depending on what LLM that you are using, there is a limit to the tokens that can be given as an input. And chunk overlap is what is the overlap between different chunks. And in this case, I will use the token text splitter. What this does is actually splits the given chunk that we generated before as per different tokens. You can use other splitters as well, such as recursive character splitter, and many other splitters. But here I have taken token text splitter. So the document is split as per the chunk size and the chunk overlap, and the embeddings are created using the OpenAI embeddings. So for someone who's not familiar with the embeddings, so the large language models or any other neural network models, they cannot understand directly. So they have to be they have to be given information via embeddings, which basically converts this natural language to numerical values. So that is what an embedding is. Let's run this. And so this creates the split document, which has the chunk values. The second step is to generate the questions and the ground truth answer. I have given a prompt below, which actually instructs the LLM to generate a question for each given chunk and also generate an answer to the question. The answer is returned in a JSON format. So this QA template is actually just used as an example. This is not done via any prompt tuning or anything. So it says, please generate a meaningful question where the answer is present in the given paragraph. Also generate the answer to the question using the information in the paragraph. Do not generate any extra information not present in the given paragraph. And we are giving it some examples as well. And when you give examples in a prompt, it is actually called a few shot prompt technique. So here I'm giving it some examples where I give like a context or a paragraph, and then the output is in a JSON format, which is the question that it will generate, and it also generates the answer as well. So this is just to give to tell the LLM that whenever you are generating the question and the answer, both the question and the answer should only be related to whatever information you have in the paragraph. So, okay, now now based on the template that I have written, we will generate. So I'm using the LangChain. We will generate a chain. So first we will generate the prompt template, which uses the input variable. The input variable here is just the paragraph or the input context that we will give here. The input context that we will give here, and remember that. These are just examples, and the input context that we will give here will depend on the chunks that we have created. So the LLM chain and the LLM chain is created. So we are taking the QA prompt, which we have created here, and then the LLM is a chat OpenAI. You can use any other LLMs that you want. And we are keeping the temperature as 0. What is temperature? So temperature is the how much variability you want in your response. So if you have temperature 0, that means it gives very precise information every time. If you increase the value, that means it becomes more stochastic, more creative. LLMs can become very creative, and it gives creative results every single time. So you can play with this, but for simplicity and for this task, because it's a Q&A generation task, and we want accurate question answer, we have kept the temperature 0. I have taken the model as GPT-4 Turbo Preview. You can explore any other models that is out there. So, well, you can go GPT-4 models, OpenAI. You can go to models here, and then there is a whole list of models here that you can check out. And I'm using like GPT-4 Turbo Preview, and you can use any other models that is there. Just be mindful of the context tokens, the context window. If you use a large context window, then it can cost you more. So be mindful of that before using any of these models. Now, let's take the top 2 splits only, and because for simplicity, let's take the top 2 splits. And first, so let's create a dictionary where it will store the chunks, the question, the chunk, like if it's chunk 1 or chunk 2 or chunk 3, and then it will store the questions and then the ground truths. So the Q&A is generated. Let's see. run this because I see my kernel got restarted. Let's see if I can run this. Or it's giving me some error. Yeah, my kernel got started. So let me start from here, from the beginning. Um, or I can actually show this in my local actually. I have a Visual Studio. Let me grab that. So as you can imagine, I'm very prepared for this. Let's see. Okay. Okay, so this should generate the question answer. It takes a few seconds. And I create a data frame from the question answer generated. So let's see what it has generated. Um, here this is the chunk it refers to. Remember, like there are just two chunks here on the questions. The DF questions. So what are the benefits? First question is, what are the benefits and challenges of using open source large language models or LLMs in enterprises? And then the second one is, how many individuals follow LinkedIn newsletter for insights in data science, generative AI, and large language models? So the ground truth, it also generates the ground truths. Let's see what the ground truths are. It gives me the ground truths. The benefits of using include cost savings, enhanced data control, and the ability to tailor AI tools. So, and let's see what the second answer is. So, over 95,000 individuals that trust the LinkedIn newsletter. So, um, now that we have the Q&A generated, let's build a RAG application. To building a RAG application is again using LangChain, and I've used vector store as Chroma vector store. You can use any other vector store that is out there like Pinecone, Qdrant, and so on. So what RAG does is like 3 steps. First, it does the chunks. It stores those chunks in a vector store. So storing, and then it using a retriever, it tries to retrieve the context or the chunk based on what query you have given. So that is exactly what it is doing here. And I have again used another chain, which is the retrieval QA chain. And the LLM that I've used is a chat OpenAI chain. And the model is GPT-4 Turbo Preview. Now, someone may argue that the model is same as generating the QA. So you can choose whatever model that you want. It doesn't matter. It's just for exemplary purposes. And then the chain type is stuff that it this gives the entire context as input. So let's run this. So what it does, it just based on the questions that we have generated here, it tries to find the relevant answer from the entire document that we have given, or the document here is the website, the blog from Data Science Dojo. So it takes a while, depending on what model you have chosen. It can take a lot of it can take a long time as well. So let's see, give a few seconds to run. Okay, let's run now. Let's run the data frame that was created. So it gives you the answers that are generated using RAG and then the context, like from what context it derived the answer. So this is I showed you that I told you before, like these apps, they are very fickle and they are not consistent to the variations in the prompts. So let's say I do an experiment, and let's say I modify the one question and use the generative AI term instead of LLMs. The actual questions can be very complex. Like no one is going to ask like very simple questions, right? Whenever you are Q&A with a document, depending on the users, they can ask like very complex questions, and because they do not know what is there in the document, which is generally the case, the document size cannot be just this one page URL link. It can be like 80 to 100 pages, and these are never straightforward. So let's say the modified question is, why should I use generative AI in my company? And I run this, and then I run the query. Let's see what it generates. Okay. So it says integrating generative AI into a company can offer a wide range of benefits, enhancing creativity, decision making. Here are several reasons. If you can see the context, it has actually gotten information from its memory. It says shareholder of OpenAI Global LLC, which despite for a profit company, blah, blah, blah. It actually gotten the information from the memory rather than getting the information from the document that was given. So you have to do like careful QA, quality testing on what LLMs you are building, what prompt you are giving, and you're asking if you're telling if you're doing some checks before actually deploying the model. Now, like I showed before, one of the most popular technique is actually LLMs evaluating LLMs. So let's give an evaluation prompt where an LLM, I'll say the LLM to evaluate. You are given, so you are, I'm giving this evaluation prompt where I'm saying that you are an evaluator, you're given a question, a correct answer, and a given answer. So your goal is to just compare the correct answer and the given answer and label if it's correct or not. So run. Okay. I have to give. Um, I have run this before, so I can give you the. Um, okay, let me remove this. Run, because I've already loaded the OpenAI API key information in the environment file, so it didn't require it to run. Let's see. Now I'm running that on the ground truths and the answers. So let's see what score I get. Okay, I get an eval score that both of them are true. That the answers that I get, um, these are correct, or these are correct with respect to the ground truths, that both are same, and so it gives the true labels here. Now let me see if I okay. Uh, Now I'm going to show you another example, which is using Ragas, which is like an open source technique where the the metrics are answer relevancy, faithfulness, context recall, and context precision. So let's run this. So right or wrong. And let's see the result that we get. Okay. We got the faithfulness score as 1, and then it gave an N here, and then the answer relevancy were high. The context recall was 1 here, and then the and it was 0 here. So okay, so this is what I wanted to show, like different evaluation practices that is out there, and there is another which is eval with Lighthouse Human in the Loop framework, but I'm not going to go into details over there, but I can share the link to anyone who is interested. So that's it. That's yeah, that brings let's see. Yeah, so that brings an end to this presentation, and I can take the questions from here. So, will this slide deck be shared after the meeting? Yes. And the entire recording is there as well, so it will be shared. So, how can you perform automated manual evaluation techniques without risk of exposing the underlying data set? Um, so yeah, you have to have certain guardrails so that you do not expose the underlying data set. You need to, so whenever the LLMs, whenever you are giving, like I said, like there are several prompt injection techniques which will try to get information from the underlying data set. So you have to have right guardrails. You need to have um, and right sort of monitoring techniques as well after you deploy, so that if anything, if it has revealed anything, then it can stop it right away, or even before deploying anything, you can do a lot of you can do a lot of tests uh, as on different prompt injection detector or different or different guardrail techniques, so that you know that the underlying data set is not exposed. So yeah, and will the speaker touch on the question of how to select LLM for people who want to install DIY localized LLM for use with personal data? So I will not cover that, but there are, like, you can use several localized LLMs, and you can just use that with your use that with your personal data, or you can use different APIs that are there. For example, with AnyScale and others, so you can use that for Llama 2 and Mixtral and so on. So but for the time's sake, and because this is only focused on evaluation techniques, I won't be discussing on how to install DIY localized LLMs to use with personal data. Would like to understand evaluation tool or framework where LLM responds to natural language question with code generation like SQL query. And SQL query is then executed against the database to generate. Yeah, uh, so if I understand it correctly, Jignesh, you're asking that uh, in case of code generation, how you can know that the SQL query, when it is executed, it is able to generate the relevant answers. So yeah, for that you need to have you need you need to have like some sort of some there in case like there you need to have some sort of ground truth on where you can evaluate your SQL queries. Uh, let's say you have the data sets on which the databases on which you are running the SQL query on. You can create some benchmarking data sets, and then you can try to find the answers that you get, whether they are the relevant answers to your question. You can do some kind of matching to see if there is some kind of similarity between the question, the SQL query that you have asked, and the answer that has generated. So far, there are like very less techniques who focus, or very few techniques that I've known who focus on SQL query. But so that is definitely a very interesting task, and uh, that is a very interesting research area as well. So, and yes, I will give the URL to the collab notebook. We'll do that. OpenAI key, do you need 20 per month? Um, so so you can use the API key, and it is like per API call depending on what you are using. I think you are asking about ChatGPT Plus, which is 20, ChatGPT 4, which is 20 per month, but this is different, that this is per API call. So depending on how many API calls you make, you will be charged for that. How does your product differ, and what additional value does it offer compared to the methods you shared? So ours is actually a human in the loop framework. It's an end-to-end eval framework, or end-to-end QA framework as well, that does an holistic that takes an holistic approach. It generates benchmarking data based on prompt injection, input variation to input prompt, like variation depending inconsistency related to prompt variations that I showed, and then the toxic inputs and so on. So it generates the benchmarking data set based on that. And we support several apps, like several different kind of apps like summarization, chatbots, currently focused on chatbots, but we are expanding that to summarization, task classification, task RAG apps, and so on. So yeah, it's a human in the loop framework. So it does in an automated manner, which in an AI assisted manner, so that once the LLM does the eval, it can take the evals, and then it can take the answers, and the answers that are performed that have the ground truth, or the areas that need more attention, or what we call as the risky areas. It gets that information, and then the SMS, they try to go and see why it has performed bad, or they can edit the information, or they can give the rating, and based on that feedback, we again do like an LLM alignment, or we take the feedback and then improve the system. So yeah, that is how it differs. Because three models are statistical in nature, they always give different outcome. Always give different outputs. How to come across this in validation? Yeah, I mean, the models, they are very different. They are very statistical in nature, and they will give different outputs. So you have to have like rigorous test cases, rigorous test benchmarking data sets on which it will perform. And these cannot be any static benchmarks. These have to be like dynamic benchmarks. So it has to be in an evolving process, so that you know that how your model is performing. Yes, I can give you link to the demo. How do you feel eval will evolve in the next few years? Today, it feels like sort of putting a gold star sticker on your model, but it feels like it needs to evolve past that. Eval above X% massive government organization for it to be useful for business. Yeah, eval will become the important technique in next few years. Eval is actually a short part. The entire is like the end-to-end Q&A, sorry, end-to-end quality assessment that needs to be done. And more and more that I think about it, it will become like it will become a very essential part, because there'll be more and more apps in future, and more and more these eval techniques will evolve. Definitely, LLMs, evaluating LLMs will play a very key role in that, but there should be some human component as well, which is doing the checks, and which is putting the checks that whether it is doing the right thing or not. So definitely this will evolve a lot, and there is a lot of research that is going on in this field. Yeah, so that's that. What would be the difference if instead of OpenAI we use something locally trained llama? Your example is quite specific and would need full Gen AI model. So you can definitely use a locally trained llama model, any other model, and you can try the examples on that. So this is just to give you an example as to how you can build your own evals, how you can see that with slight change in variations or input context, how the answers they differ, or gives the answer from the memory. So that's why the eval techniques are needed. And of course, you can customize your RAG apps and whatnot. But it is just to give you an idea that if you do not have this eval technique, how would you even know that your RAG model is performing better or not? So, so yeah, so you can use any kind of eval techniques, any kind of model, not only OpenAI, but you need eval techniques for that. Yeah. Yes, I'll be sharing the slides on the Python code just after this meeting. Where are you getting I don't know where are you getting the questions from? Do you, do we not have access to the questions you're answering? I'm sure you have access to the questions you're answering right now. Maybe the host can guide you for that. But if you go to the Q&A session, you can see that the questions are right there. AWS has LLMs like Claude or Bedrock. Could you please compare this with GPT models? Um, Again, like, sure, that can be done, but this is out of the uh, this is not what will be covered in this webinar now, but sure, that can be done with Cloud and Bedrock. Okay, I guess that's about it. Are there any other evaluation techniques?
Yeah, I guess that's it for the questions, I believe. Yeah, are you done, Sonali, with the quick Q&A?
I think I'm done. Like, there's this last, like, are there any other evaluation techniques on, like, there are a lot of evaluation techniques that I just showed, and many are evolving as well. You can, um, like you can use open source techniques like Ragas, or you can use closed source techniques like that Lighthouse provides. So yeah, there are several eval techniques, and these eval techniques would vary depending on which apps you are trying to evaluate. Is it the summarization app, or is it the SQL query kind of stuff that someone asked, or is it the chatbot based app? So yeah, so these eval techniques, they vary a lot. I have I don't think that Bedrock is a model. I think you are trying to, Bedrock is like a platform where many different models are hosted, Sudhir. So I think you want to ask about Claude or GPT. I haven't done that assessment, but if I'll do, I'll post it on my LinkedIn. So yeah, thanks for the question.